One. Good morning, everybody. Today, we're going to have a whole bunch of fun. We're going to break down how I met Ryan Serhant, how I developed a relationship with him and his team, and it completely changed my business and my life. May have saved my marriage too, because one of the biggest pieces of advice he gave me wasn't even related to real estate. So I like making these segments very interactive. And sorry, give me 1 second here. I like making these segments super interactive. So I'm going to be screen sharing and showcasing to you the journey on kind of how I got there. There's some key players and some key people that I'm going to introduce you to. So let me share a screen here super quickly. What you are looking at right now is a frozen tundra. If you're on Clubhouse, which is the ear pod that I have in my ear in Breakfast with Champions, you can see that in the screen on YouTube. I'll be talking audibly as if you're watching this visually, making sure that it's an interactive experience on both platforms. If you're on YouTube, I would encourage you to go download the Clubhouse app and come over to Breakfast with Champions, because we do some exclusive content after we're done this segment on Clubhouse. So if you're on both platforms, well, welcome to the Justinverse. You are in it to win it. So Ryan Serhant, what was the problem that I had before I met Ryan? Truthfully, I felt overwhelmed. I felt like I had plateaued. I felt like I was drowning. And a lot of people that accomplish anything in business can relate. I bet if you're watching this video or listening on Clubhouse, you may feel the same way. And I knew there was something more for me, but I didn't really know what that was. And it took somebody in my world to actually help me realize what it was. So I was a single agent working with my wife in little old London, Ontario, Canada. So let me screen share super quick, and I'll show you on Google Earth where we're located, and I'll explain it to those people that are on Clubhouse. Google Earth is a phenomenal platform. If you are screen sharing and you want to show people things, it's super, super fast. So London, Ontario is in southwestern Ontario, Canada. So go to Michigan, look at Lake Huron, and basically between Detroit and Toronto is where London is located. Enter player number 2, Jas Takhar. So this is the first person you're going to go follow on Instagram. Jas Takhar actually has probably one of the best YouTube channels and Instagrams in terms of, an entrepreneur that is creating content. He's got some amazing resources on creating a pillar piece of content and breaking it down into many. But fun thing is, Jas is one of my best friends. So he runs the RIC team out of Toronto. They're like one of the top 2 real estate teams in all of Canada with Royal LePage, but he creates an insane amount of content. This beautiful man called me one day and said, "Hey, Justin, I want to start a YouTube channel." This beautiful man doesn't even use a laptop. He only uses his phone. So I drove to Toronto, showed him how to set up his YouTube channel. Dude ran with it. He has a podcast. He does media like nonstop and still only uses his phone. He built an amazing content team to help him with that. But the first podcast he ever shot was with Ryan Serhant. So Jazzy Fizzle flies back to Toronto, calls me right away and says, "Justin, you need to meet Ryan." And my exact response to him was, "What's Ryan Serhant going to teach me? He's in Manhattan. I'm in London, Ontario." At the time, London was my market. That's all I really did. I did some stuff in Grand Bend and Port Stanley, but it was really me and my wife selling real estate in London. And he goes, "No, you don't understand. Ryan's a practitioner. Like, he's like you, he's like me. Like, it's not like the TV show. Like, he's actually a dude that is doing the thing, and you're very similar personalities. You need to go see him." All right. It's like, okay, fine. I'll make a point and I'll go down and see him. I trust my friends, even if I don't necessarily think that there's going to be a ton of value. I'm like, I'll bring my video guys down and I'll shoot a podcast with him, and there'll be a branding play, right? Ryan's got a lot of exposure. I do that podcast, put that online. It'll be great. So long story short, enter the next 2 players, Jamie Dodds and Nathan Smith. So I'm going to share another thing with you on the screen, and I'm going to explain it to you guys. So Nathan Smith and Jamie Dodds are real estate agents. So they are a commercial and an assistant of mine that I brought down with me and just gave them a camera. So from the content creation perspective, anybody that is wondering, like, how do I create content and how do I capture things like this as I'm traveling, create podcasts? Well, you literally get a camera, you give it to somebody, and you have him follow you around. So on YouTube, I'm actually just showing you a video of me and Nathan kind of in the airport. We did a vlog documenting the whole trip and our trip to New York because I really wanted to capture content. And I'm showing this on YouTube because I think it's funny of me and Nathan sitting in the airport talking about what we're going to do, sitting back, looking at it now, realizing what it ended up being. So Nathan and I were going there talking about the business we wanted to create. Nathan is an amazing guy. I hired him actually from Lululemon to be my assistant for about 2 years. And I talked to him yesterday about how amazing it was that we shot this in 2018. And he has created one of the most incredible real estate businesses today based on exactly what he said in this video. And his goal and ambition was to create a business where he was doing what he loved to do, which is playing squash, playing music. He's a drummer. He does worship at Faith Church in St. Thomas. Like, he is a people person. He's not a salesman by any means. And he attracts more business than you can possibly imagine. And the fact that he had this mindset and was willing to take a risk and go to New York with us was a key point. So, we ended up just going down to New York, going down to meet Ryan, and I'll scroll down through, went to New York City. We captured a whole bunch of content while we were there. I'll post the vlog on the actual YouTube channel later so you guys can actually watch what that trip was like. Man, it's funny to look back now because I look like a baby in this video. But went down to meet Ryan. And what I found was when I sat down with Ryan and his team, I realized the first lesson I learned from him was not to judge a book by its cover. And I made the mistake, right? Like, I said to Jas out of the gate, what's Ryan going to teach me? He's in Manhattan. He's a TV star, right? I made an assumption about somebody that I didn't even know. And I think the TV show really does put Ryan in a certain light where he's a certain type of character. Like, back in 2018, the character they portrayed on the show was he was verbose, he was brash, he was jumping in pools, causing a ruckus. And they didn't really speak to who he was in his character. And you realize that TV is very fake, right? A lot of times if you're watching reality TV, they're taking the best parts, they're chopping it up to form their own narrative. And it really wasn't what I thought it was in terms of, the character of who Ryan was. So went down, met Ryan, sat down with him, and had every intention of shooting a podcast. That's what I just told you guys, right? I'm like, I'm going to do the photo op thing, shoot a podcast, air it. It's going to be amazing, right? We shot the entire first 45 minutes that I sat down with Ryan. I never aired a minute of it because he gave me everything. I sat down with Ryan, told him how I felt. I said, this is where I'm at now. I've got Ryan, I've got Jamie, I've got an admin running the business with my beautiful wife, but I know there's more. How did you build your team? And he just broke it down for me. He's like, well, your market's kind of like my market, like Manhattan, New York City, a whole bunch of boroughs. Well, London, Ontario, you have like Lucan, you have Arva, Port Stanley, Grand Bend. Like, those are your boroughs. You just got to drive 25 minutes to get to them. Look at your market the same way. Now, the second thing I realized, the second lesson I learned was shut up and listen, right? Because as he started telling me these things, I realized very quickly within probably 5 minutes of the interview that he wasn't going to hold back. I thought I was going to get the canned scripted information. He wasn't going to tell me anything because he was going to be protective of his business. And, what I experienced in most of the real estate industry was that scarcity mindset. And he was the absolute opposite. He gave me everything. He's like, here's how I built my team. Here's how I do my split plans. Here's how I structure things for new development. This is how I go after developers. Like, he just packed everything in, and it really got my attention very, very quickly. So in that first probably 5 to 10 minutes, I decided I'm not going to air this episode because I want to honor the relationship, but I'm also going to shut up and listen to what he's telling me, because I think one of the biggest mistakes people make in entrepreneurship or when they get around mentors is they overcompensate. And to this date, so I'm one of 7 ambassadors globally for the Serhant program. There's over 10,000 members globally, and I get calls all the time. They're like, I'm going to meet Ryan. Any advice for me? And I give him the same advice every time. I'm like, don't make the mistake I did. Don't think you're going there for the photo op. Don't go there trying to tell him why you're so unique and trying to become his best friend, because everybody wants to be his best friend. Bring the dude a problem. So if you go to any mentor, if I go to Glenn or I go to anybody else and say, here's what I'm struggling with, how would you solve it? Real practitioners and real mentors will dig into that problem. You'll get a lot of value by proximity because you happen to be sitting in there. But the more you bring them problems and the more you let them just riff, the more you're going to get back from the mentors. Now, understand everybody's built differently. How Ryan's building his business is different how I'm building my business, but there's still lessons to be imparted from the what different ways people are doing things. So the third lesson actually that he taught me in that meeting was to find the people first So when we're talking about the real estate business, obviously sales are a big part of it, finding properties, listings, projects, so on and so forth. But a lot of people make the mistake of thinking that the real estate industry is all about finding listings and finding sales. I would actually argue that it's more so about finding the right people first and that the business comes. And I mean internally and externally. Like I do think you need to find the right characters within your organization to help support you doing the things that you want to do, as much as I would say finding the right clients that you want to just knock it out of the park for. So a few people that I met by proximity when I was at his organization is, I'm actually going to share my screen again. I'm going to give you a couple more people to follow. First guy was Joe Laresca. So when I met with Ryan Serhant, there was this guy with crazy hair and a camera right next to him. His name was Social Joe at the time. And he handled a lot of the branding and visual arts for Ryan. This guy has gone on to create probably one of the coolest media companies in New York City, Noise, up to this point. And I consider Joe to be a friend as well by proximity. Because again, even though I was around Ryan, I was also looking at the people that were doing the things with him at that time. Another guy you can follow, his name is Adrian Vlogs. And if you go back to 2017, before I met Ryan, he sat down with Gary Vee and started talking about how branding and media was the future and how really having somebody follow you around with a camera and shooting vlogs and creating content really is going to separate you from everybody else. Adrian is the guy that helped Ryan create a ton of his content in the beginning. And something you can be inspired from a guy like Adrian and Ryan is that they were not amazing out of the gate. They just figured it out. They press record. They did it over and over and over, and they really built something. And then there was Kristen, A_Killa. She was another key component of Ryan's organization, and she helped a lot with the visual design side of things. The reason I'm showing you all of these names, and if you're on Clubhouse, you can click the YouTube link at the top if you want to click on these IG accounts and follow them, is these are the supporting characters that really helped Ryan become the person that he is. They are people that really have made a difference in his organization. Two other people I have to mention. One is his community manager, Sydney Sherman. She's an absolute dynamo. She's his community manager, probably one of the brightest stars when it comes to building communities. Sid has been a key player in helping Prime grow as a company because she has helped our direct reports build our own internal culture as well as our external culture. They're absolutely amazing. Tyler Mount, who has been on Breakfast with Champions, he is a Grammy Award winning digital strategist, absolute monster, worked at NBC Universal and was involved in presidential campaigns. Again, supporting characters. Everybody just runs to Ryan, but they fail to see the people by proximity and how absolutely powerful they can be. So that was the third lesson, is I really learned that you got to find the right people, but you got to pay attention to the people around you. Also, special shout out to Jen Aless. When I was sitting down with Ryan, his head of new development sat down with me that same day and started breaking down how they operate and get new projects and execute them. Now, that gave me the opportunity to turn around and tell them some of my secrets. So when I was sitting down with Ryan the first time, the lesson that I learned was, A, you got to be quiet and listen. You got to pay attention to the people, but you also got to look for the opportunities to give without any expectation of return. So I still remember when I was sitting down with Jen, she was talking about how we operate. I explained to her how our systems work, because I'm very systems and processes driven of how can I take something that takes 20 clicks and make it 1 or 2 clicks? And for example, if I'm selling your house, I'm going to send you a really simple link. It's an intake form you fill out. It creates a person in Follow Up Boss, which is our CRM, gives me all your details, saves me from doing dual input, but also makes sure that I'm paying attention to the details you're telling me about your house. It triggers an action plan, and then it allows me to make sure that I do a follow-up and holds myself accountable. So all I did was I went into my systems, copy and pasted everything, and just sent it to Jen, and did it with no expectation of return, but really did it because I felt like, man, I'm getting so much value from these people. How can I solve problems that they may have, right? So that really started helping me anchor the fact that there was a relationship beyond just the time that I was there. So again, if you're searching for a mentor, a really cool way you could do this is by thinking long game. Don't think I'm just here for a short period of time. Think that you can actually develop a relationship. Number 4 lesson he taught me in that meeting was agents agents are a funny thing, right? We think that the value of an agent is the transaction and the access to the MLS. I can tell you that, if you're a real estate agent, all your value is plugging people to the MLS. You're already out of a job. You just don't know it yet. The value of an agent is to be somebody that is a counselor, a consigliere for somebody that is looking to accomplish something and they need a trusted advisor. That is your role. And he really indicated that, the skill set you have to develop as that person is very different than what it's been in the past. And you need to think of yourself as a media company. So I'm really trying to exemplify that for everybody out there, no matter what business you're in. You really need to look at yourself as a media company. And he had a big impact in how I looked at our branding and our growth from that step on. Number 5, when I left that meeting with Ryan, the initial one, and I'll fast forward a little bit because this was 2018 and we're at 2022 now, I realized I wanted more. So I sat down with Ryan, realized he was a practitioner, learned a whole bunch from him. I can tell you, I can directly correlate about 330 listings to that initial meeting that I got from advice that he gave me. But I was like, I need this person to just have that meeting with me once a year to hold me accountable. But at this time, he didn't do any courses. He didn't do any coaching. He didn't do anything. So what did I do? Bet on myself. Called my wife in the cab. She runs the company with me. And I said, hey, Shannon, I know we were talking about hiring this other coach, and it was going to be a hefty sum of money to hire this other coach who's very well known in the real estate space. But I'm like, this other coach doesn't actually sell real estate. I'm like, can I offer that same monetary compensation to Ryan and see if he'll be my coach and do that meeting every year? My wife is like, well, I trust you. If you think that's the right play, go for it. So I emailed Ryan. I was like, hey, dude, that was unbelievable. Thank you so much. I'd be willing to pay you X amount of money a year just to mentor me. And, I prefaced it by saying, I'm not going to call you every single month. I'm not going to call you every single week. Like, I want this to be something that doesn't take away from your time because I know your time is valuable. But honestly, just meeting you once a year for that meeting, I know I'll have to show up and hold myself accountable and say, hey, this is what I wanted to accomplish. This is what I accomplished or I didn't. And that's going to be enough to really make the value there. His response is what really got me. His response was, thanks so much, man. I don't do that. But you can stop by New York anytime. If you're in New York, stop by, we'll have that meeting and, it'll hold you accountable. Essentially is what he said to me. And I was like, wow, like that, talk about speaking to somebody's character, turning down that money and just saying, just pop by anytime. Like, we'll chop it up and we'll figure it out. I didn't give up. So what I did after that was in his book, Sell It Like Serhant, he had this strategy he used to land a developer once where he sent that developer a bookcase and then sent the developer a book every single week until he was filling the bookcase, eventually got a meeting and then landed the development. Very creative way of getting somebody's attention. And I used his own strategy against him. So follow up, follow back, follow through. So about a month later, I went on Cameo. I had Dean Cain, the guy that played Superman, basically sent him a whole rundown on why he should mentor me and so on and so forth. He got it, probably chuckled a little bit, and then sent email follow-ups. And then lo and behold, about a year and a half later, got an email back from his team and him saying, hey, we just launched this course. It's basically everything that you asked for. Are you still down to, trial it out and do the mentorship and all that stuff? And I said, 100%. I said I wanted to do it. Not only that, like since I met you guys last year, I got so much value. For me, it's like buying your favorite singer's CD. Like you gave me value. So you drop an album, I'll buy it. Buy a Morning 5 planner to support Glenn and the crew because I've gotten so much value from this room. Awesome. Happy to do it. So I ended up jumping into the course, and that's where everything just completely changed. Where when I went for the second meeting and I showed up at his office and said, here's everything you taught me last time. I did it. Here's my new problem. That's where I saw a light bulb go off. And that's where I saw the relationship really start to develop. So another tip I want to give you when you're looking to work with mentors is execute and collaborate. The biggest way to get a mentor to give you more information or teach you or bring you into their inner circle is to show them that you're a practitioner. When I see people that are like me, they get a lot more of my time than a lot of other people do. If I give somebody a piece of advice, execute, and then they come back to me and say, hey, I did this. Now I got this problem. I get excited about that because I almost feel like I'm building by proximity. And I laugh because I literally I was prepping for this session and I got a video from Ryan and Ginger Walker yesterday. They were doing a meeting and just going over some stuff. And they sent me a message just saying, oh, hey, we're talking about you and blah, blah, blah. Like I laughed about that video coming in the day before I ran this segment because it really speaks to where our relationship has grown from now. Ryan's doing what he's doing. He's got the Serhant crew. He's got the course. He's doing stuff globally in his space. I'm building a very, very different organization. But from that initial meeting, when I sat down, met somebody that I didn't think would be my mentor, realized that there was a congruency and there was a culture fit, went in, executed, took a risk on myself, followed up, built a relationship, paid attention to the people that were around him that added so much value to my life. Our relationship changed to that place where I feel like I can bring as much value to their organization as they bring to mine. But having the accountability partners and having the right mentors in your life to hold you accountable will drive you. Because I showed that video to my wife last night, and I know that I'm slated to talk to Ryan again in a couple months. And I have to tell him, well, this is what we did since our last meeting, and this is what we're doing for the next meeting. So I guess one of the questions I have for you would be, who is a mentor? Who is somebody that you can get around? And how can you, A, add value to their life, and then B, actually execute and then build a long-term relationship? Because there's a difference between a mentor and a coach. A mentor is somebody that is doing the things that you want to do, maybe at a level you don't think is achievable, but they will reach down and help you. And a coach is somebody who's going to just hold you accountable on a daily or weekly basis. The very last lesson, actually, there's like 4 more, but I'm not going to have time to get into them today. But the very last lesson I want to give you, the most important lesson that Ryan taught me, isn't even related to real estate. And I started the video saying there was one piece where he gave me that could have potentially saved my marriage, was so critical. So in business, you're feeling overwhelmed, you're building something, you have a spouse, they understand you have to sacrifice, you have to work hard. There's so many things that are going to just overwhelm you and feel like it's drawing you away from your relationship. He told me the best decision he ever made was to look at his schedule once a week with his wife and then look at what's coming up so she understands the world that he's in and what's actually happening. But then 2, he gave her the golden hammer and said, anything after 6 o'clock, you have the ability to veto. If you say, I need you home that night, sorry, that meeting with that $200 million developer is not going to happen. He gave her the ability to say, well, it's not going to happen. The reality of it was 90% of the time, never an issue, right? Because she felt respected and loved enough that she could do that she rarely ever did. But if there are times in your spouse's life or your partner's life where they need that attention and there are bigger priorities, you got to understand business is business. Relationships are critical. He said this: you didn't marry an employee, you married a partner. And that really stuck with me. So when I came back off that initial meeting and I implemented that, far from perfect in the first year, far from perfect in the second year, I'm still working on it on a regular basis. I can tell you that really did amplify everything that I was doing from a real estate perspective, because I really felt like it shifted my perspective of what a true partnership can be. I think you find the right partners, you find the right mentors, it can have a big impact in how your business is growing. And I would also recommend, more than anything, to be thoughtful about how you interact with the people around the mentors as well as the mentors themselves. So if you're on YouTube, pop back over to Clubhouse. We're going to do another segment in a moment here. Hopefully you got some value from this episode. I will pop back into the comments, reply to everybody, and appreciate having you all here. If you